Could you tell me a little bit about the emergence of your feminist identity?
The emergence of my feminist identity. Well, I think, I don't know if you've read, Donna Haraway talks about women in the 1950s being offered some of the same opportunities as boys in the classrooms, and a kind of the go science American culture. And I think very early on, I went to a very kind of populist, I grew up in my early childhood in northern Minnesota, very populist, very everybody's kind of equal. Of course, this is not true, but that's the ideology. So I think I always had a sense that boys and girls were not very different. But that's a little bit different than feminist. I think that sort of made way for a feminism. And it was probably as an undergraduate in the late 1969 to 1971 that I just consumed the feminist literature that had been coming out in the 1960s. I was just, whether it be Betty Friedan or Samuel de Beauvoir, which is older, but was reprinted, and then eventually Phyllis Chesler and all of the classics that were coming out in the 1960s. I went to a women's college, and that was I started at a very small women's college and then went to Mount Holyoke, and there was a very strong sense of women and accomplishment, and I think these all meshed. My early childhood in a populist environment, the feminist literature, and music, Janis Joplin. It was certainly a figure to contend with, and then, as I say, being in a women's college where all women could do science, because if all women didn't do science, then there would be no one in the classes.
Right. Tell me a little bit about the atmosphere at Holyoke at that period in time.
The atmosphere was, it was actually kind of split culture. At that time, it was when I was an undergraduate that the Ivy League started going co-ed. So at that time, places like Mount Holyoke or Wells, they still had the most high-achieving American students. I wasn't from the States at that time, I was living in Canada. But, so these women were very hardworking, high achievers. But there was this split, it was almost like a generational split in the same generation. There were women, students who didn't buy feminism. Not many of them, but they just said, look, let's play bridge at night, and let's try to find a guy at Amherst or Harvard and the smokers. But the majority of women were very high achieving. They set very high goals for themselves, and they saw feminism as just necessary, as something that they weren't radical about it, but they just thought it was right.
It was a natural fit for their kind of.
And we talk a lot about it. I mean, I never thought about this. I haven't reflected upon it, but we would at breakfast and lunch when we talk about, have you read so and so, and what do you think about Gloria Steinem, and what do you think about this new Ms. magazine, and which I think debuted in '72 or '73, and so I think it was a very supportive environment.
Yeah.